Welcome to the Lore Weaver podcast, a space for deep dive literary analysis, character studies, and thematic readings across fantasy, historical fiction, and speculative worlds. Here we look beyond surface level takes and popular shorthand to examine what the text is actually doing, how power works, how belief shapes outcomes, and how characters are flattened or misunderstood over time. Let's get into today's topic. When asked about a minor moment in Westerosi history that had a significant impact on how the course of the country played out, George R.R. Martin said this: I think in The Hedge Knight, the first Dunk and Egg story, the death of Baelor Breakspear, who was the heir next in line to the throne, and I think would have been a very strong and very competent king, who dies to defend the honor of an insignificant Hedge Knight. How is Westeros history different if Baelor does not die? That would be very significant. What if Westeros didn't lose Baelor Breakspear that day? What if the realm had been ruled by a man many believed embodied chivalry, wisdom, and restraint? Well, that's something we'll never know, and there's a reason for that. Had Baelor Breakspear lived, Westeros wouldn't be the hot mess we know today, because Baelor Breakspear wasn't just a good man. He wasn't just a skilled knight or a dutiful hand. He was a political bridge. He was born of Valyrian and Dornish ancestry, married to a lady of the marches, and he led Stormlords and Dornishmen together in battle. But he represented a future Westeros wasn't entirely ready to accept yet. Had George let him live, so many problems may have been resolved before the story that we see in the books. To understand Baelor, we have to understand the world he was born into. So let's go through a quick Westerosi history recap. King Aegon IV was married to his sister Queen Aerys, with whom he had Daemon and eventually Daenerys. No, not that Daenerys, a Daenerys who predated her. He also fathered several illegitimate children, including Daemon Blackfyre. Unlike all of his other illegitimate children, Daemon's mother was a Targaryen, Aegon's cousin Daena the Defiant, one of the many women who were passed over for the Iron Throne in favor of male relatives. That meant Daeron Targaryen and Daemon Blackfyre were the sons of a Targaryen king with Targaryen women. Aegon IV broke protocol by giving Daemon the Targaryen sword Blackfyre, which many viewed as synonymous with him giving his illegitimate son the Iron Throne. To make it even more convoluted, Aegon IV claimed that Daeron was the illegitimate son of Nyerys with their brother Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight. Then he legitimized all of his illegitimate children on his deathbed. Despite all of this, Daemon still succeeded his father as king of Westeros, but the seeds were sown for the Blackfyre Rebellion that would eventually come. King Daemon II did what generations of Targaryens failed to do. He brought Dorne into the Seven Kingdoms and did so peacefully. Not with dragonfire, not with invasion, not through blood spilled, but through marriage and diplomacy. Daemon had been married to Princess Maria Martell of Dorne for years at that point, in a marriage that was arranged by King Baelor the Blessed. He then married his younger sister Daenerys, who Daemon Blackfyre was in love with, to Meryn Martell. Through that marriage and additional negotiations, Daemon brought Dorne into the realm peacefully and willingly. It was a remarkable political achievement, but peace does not erase centuries of hatred. The Dornish had fought the Targaryens for generations. For even longer than that, the Marcher Lords along the Dornish border had built their identities on resisting them. Entire houses had risen to prominence through war against Dorne. But now, the Dornish were not enemies, but were fellow citizens. While his father was a Targaryen king in Daeron, Baelor's mother was Maria, a Dornish princess. That made him the living embodiment of Daeron's policy, and he looked like it. We're told plainly in The World of Ice and Fire. Yet too many men looked upon Baelor's dark hair and eyes and muttered that he was more Martell than Targaryen, even though he proved a man who could win respect with ease and was as open-handed and just as his father. That line is doing enormous political work. Baelor does not look like the traditional Targaryen ideal. He doesn't have the silver gold hair or the purple eyes that Westeros associates with dragon lords. He has dark hair, dark eyes, and a Dornish cast to his features. By the time we see him in The Hedge Knight, his nose is broken more than once. And in a realm that was already uneasy about Dornish influence at court, that was hugely important. Now place Baelor beside his rival, Daemon Blackfyre. Daemon is described as tall, powerful, a warrior without equal, and referred to as half a god among mortal men. He bears Blackfyre, the sword of Aegon the Conqueror himself, the blade that every Targaryen king had wielded since the conquest up to that point. The Blackfyre Rebellion is often discussed as a political conflict, and it absolutely was, but it was also a conflict of aesthetics and culture. Daemon stood straight and proud, his stomach flat and hard as an oaken shield, as Sir Eustace later recalls. His half-brother Daemon II, by contrast, was spindly and round-shouldered, and when Daemon named his heir Baelor, after Baelor the Blessed, whom many considered feeble, critics saw softness layered upon softness. Even the name became political. Baelor the Blessed was remembered as pious, pacifistic, and fragile. Many of his decisions were very harmful to the realm, regardless of the positive reputation he has now. Baelor Breakspear would spend his entire life proving he was none of those things. So the rebellion was fueled by politics rooted in resentment of Dornish influence, fear of shifting power, and anger among the Marcher Lords. But it was sold through identity, through a sword, through a body, through physical coloring. One claimant looked like a dragon of old Valyria, the other looked like peace, and peace in Westeros is harder to sell than war. Baelor was born into this tension. Before he ever picked up a sword, he was already fighting uphill, not because he lacked strength, but because he represented a future the realm couldn't fully trust. By the time we meet Baelor in the Hedge Knight, he feels well established in the role of the respected administrator and politician. He is shown as calm, measured, and competent, a prince who seems already kingly. When Dunk sees him for the first time, he describes Baelor as follows. Even seated, he looked to be a head taller than the others, to judge from the long straight legs stretched out before him. His short-cropped hair was dark and peppered with gray, his strong jaw clean-shaven. His nose looked as though it had been broken more than once. Though he was dressed very plainly, in green doublet, brown mantle, and scuffed boots, there was a weight to him, a sense of power and certainty. There it is. No flash, no silver hair flowing in the wind, no theatrical armor blazing with rubies. He dresses plainly and allows his authority to show in his bearing. Baelor is substance, not spectacle, but the world of Ice and Fire reminds us that this steadiness was not universally embraced right away due to anti-Dornish bigotry and Baelor's own appearance with his dark hair and dark eyes. Baelor's parents, appearance, and even his name made acceptance a struggle, but that was a battle he won as he became a bridge that united factions, and that bridge was not theoretical. Baelor doesn't just inherit reconciliation from his father, he performs it. In addition to being the son of a Targaryen king and a Dornish princess, Baelor was also the husband of a Marcher lady. Baelor also distinguished himself during the celebration of the other half of the Targaryen-Martell alliance, the marriage of Princess Daenerys and Meryn Martell. The eldest, Prince Baelor, won the name Breakspear at the age of 17, following his famous victory at Princess Daenerys' wedding tourney. He defeated Daemon Blackfyre in the final tilt. Tournaments weren't just games, they were political and financial events. By defeating Daemon Blackfyre at such a public event, Baelor elevated himself and his family's political party. While many could criticize his father Daemon for not being skilled in arms, Baelor and his younger brother Maekar proved that they were more than able to make up for what he lacked. Another way Baelor made up for the perceived deficiencies was in his marriage. His wife was Jenna Dondarrion. House Dondarrion is not neutral. They are Stormlanders. More specifically, they are Marcher Lords. The Marcher houses have a history of war with Dorne that predates the arrival of the Targaryens in Westeros. Their lands sit on the border. Their identity was forged in conflict. For centuries they raided and were raided. They bled and made others bleed. The world of Ice and Fire spells that out clearly here. Knights and lords of the Dornish marches came to mistrust Daemon and Baelor as well, and began to look more and more to the old days when the Dornishmen were the enemy to fight, not rivals for the king's attention and largesse. And then they would look at Daemon Blackfyre, grown tall and powerful, and half a god among mortal men, and with the conqueror's sword in his possession, and wonder. To marry a Marcher Lord's daughter when he was half Dornish is not romantic symbolism, it is political balm. It says, Dorne is not the enemy. The Marches are not the enemy. We are one realm now. Baelor's life becomes a physical embodiment of reconciliation. Dornish blood through his mother, Stormlander alliance through his wife, Targaryen authority through his father. This is a prince who understands that unity is not declared, it is enacted. And nowhere is that clearer than at the Red Grass Field. The first Blackfyre Rebellion is remembered through spectacle, Daemon with Blackfyre in hand, Bloodraven on Weeping Ridge, white arrows falling like rain. But listen to how the final fight is described. Prince Baelor Breakspear appeared with a host of Stormlords and Dornish men falling on the rebel rear, while the young Prince Maekar rallied what remained of Lord Aeron's van and made an implacable anvil, against which the rebels were hammered and destroyed. Stormlords and Dornishmen together. That pairing is not accidental. The Marcher Lords mistrusted Daemon and Baelor due to Martell influence, and yet here at the decisive moment of the war, Baelor leads former enemies as one force, Stormlords and Dornishmen advancing together. Baelor is not just winning the battle, he is demonstrating the future Daemon envisioned. The peaceful union of Dorne is no longer parchment and marriage contracts. It is visible in men fighting side by side under one banner. And that is why Baelor is so dangerous to the Blackfyre cause. Daemon could sell the fantasy of the past, the warrior king, the conqueror reborn. Baelor represented something harder to romanticize, but far more stabilizing: integration, unity, and just governance. He proves that the Dornish-looking prince can also be the hammer of war, that the half-Martell heir can command loyalty of the Stormlands, that reconciliation does not weaken the realm, it strengthens it. And that's the tragedy of Baelor Breakspear, because after he proves the bridge works, after he spends years building alliances, gaining friendships, proving himself as a skilled administrator and warrior, the bridge collapses. Not at the Red Grass Field, but at Ashford. And when it falls, Westeros does not simply lose a good man, it loses the one prince who made enemies stand shoulder to shoulder and make it look natural. If the Red Grass Field shows us Baelor as the unifier, the Hedge Knight shows us something just as important. Baelor the administrator, the strategist, and the man who understands how power actually works. He studies everyone, even Hedge Knights. When Dunk first stands before him, Baelor is already Hand of the King and heir to the Iron Throne. He has no reason to care about a Hedge Knight claiming to have served Sir Arlen of Pennytree. And yet he does. "I remember Sir Arlen of Pennytree," the man in the high seat said quietly. "He never won a tourney that I know, but he never shamed himself either. At King's Landing 16 years ago, he overthrew Lord Stokeworth and the Bastard of Harrenhal in the melee, and many years before at Lannisport, he unhorsed the Grey Lion himself." And when asked how he could possibly know such an insignificant Hedge Knight, Baelor answers this: "I make it a practice to learn all I can of my foes." That line is astonishing because Sir Arlen was not a political rival, a lord, nor a threat. But Baelor studies everyone. He understands that today's Hedge Knight might be tomorrow's problem or tomorrow's ally. This is a prince who wins loyalty by respecting even those beneath him. When Prince Aerion cruelly kills Sir Humphrey Harding's horse during the joust, Baelor does not grandstand, he acts. Lord Ashford declared Sir Humphrey the victor and awarded him Prince Aerion's courser. Prince Baelor sent his own maester to tend him, and when the question arises of replacing Sir Humphrey in the lists, Baelor intervenes again. Lord Ashford had a mind to grant the place, but Prince Baelor told him it would not be seemly to remove Sir Humphrey's shield and pavilion under the circumstances. So he preserves Humphrey's dignity as well as seeing to his medical safety. He understands that honor is political currency. He protects the image of justice even when his own nephew is the one who caused the trouble to begin with. Or maybe because of it. When Dunk is accused of striking a prince, a crime he's technically guilty of, Baelor does not deny that a trial must occur. "What my brother believes or fails to believe, one truth is beyond dispute. You laid hands upon the blood of the dragon. For that offense, you must be tried and judged and punished." Punished? Dunk did not like the sound of that. "Aerion would like your head, with or without teeth. He will not have it, I promise you, but I cannot deny him a trial. As my royal father is hundreds of leagues away, my brother and I must sit in judgment of you, along with Lord Ashford, whose domains these are, and Lord Tyrell of Highgarden, his liege lord. The last time a man was found guilty of striking one of royal blood, it was decreed that he should lose the offending hand." So he acknowledges the law, but he also gives Dunk a choice, and more importantly, he gives him a chance. You have another choice, though. Any knight accused of a crime has the right to demand a trial by combat. This is not reckless favoritism, it is procedural mercy. But that suggestion of trial by combat is escalated by Aerion into a trial of 7. The stakes get higher and so do the risks. So instead of a 1 versus 1 fight, the fight will be 7 versus 7. More importantly, Aerion is taking advantage of Dunk's lower status and therefore his lack of connections. It would be easier for a prince to find knights willing to fight beside him than it would be for an impoverished Hedge Knight. One side not being able to build a team of 7 results in an automatic loss. When Dunk is only able to get 5 other men to fight beside him, Baelor stepped up to become the 7th knight on his side. When Maekar furiously questioned him, Baelor answers calmly, "This man protected the weak, as every true knight must. Let the gods determine if he was right or wrong." But he does not simply charge into the fight from there. He calculates. Just before the fight begins, Baelor provides their team with a game plan. "Attend me, all of you," Baelor said quietly. "The accusers will be armed with heavy war lances for the first charge. Lances of ash, 8 feet long, banded against splitting and tipped with a steel point sharp enough to drive through plate with the weight of a warhorse behind it." "We shall use the same," said Sir Humphrey Beesbury. "No," Baelor said. "We will arm ourselves with tourney lances instead." "Tourney lances are made to break," objected Raymond. "They are also 12 feet long. If our points strike home, theirs cannot touch us. Aim for the helm or chest. In a tourney, it is a gallant thing to break your lance against a foe's shield, but here it may mean death. If we can unhorse them and keep our own saddles, the advantage is ours." So his plan involves longer reach on their side, lower lethality overall, and a higher chance of unhorsing without killing. This is not the mindset of a glory-seeking knight. This is battlefield mathematics. And then he reveals something even more subtle. Prince Maekar has demanded that the King's Guard fight for Aerion, but Baelor understands the flaw immediately. "My brother erred when he demanded that the King's Guard fight for his son. Their oath forbids them to harm a prince of the blood. Fortunately, I am such." That line is brilliant. He uses his own status as a shield. The King's Guard cannot strike him freely. He turns their vows into strategic leverage. He understands the rules. He understands the constraints, and he knows how to bend them without breaking them. After the battle is over, and Baelor is unknowingly fatally injured, he manages to save Dunk again, while Dunk's injuries are being addressed by those around him. Here's the dialogue that unfolded. "Get him drunk. Pour some boiling oil into it," someone suggested. "That's how the maesters do it." "Wine." The voice had a hollow metallic ring to it. "Not oil. That will kill him. Boiling wine. I'll send Maester Yormwell to have a look at him when he's done tending my brother." A tall knight stood above him, in black armor, dinted and scarred by many blows. Prince Baelor. Even as his own life was slipping away, Baelor was protecting Dunk and ensuring that he received the proper treatment for his injuries. And then he died. Steely pate dragged over a stool. "It's crushed in at the back, your grace, toward the left side, smashed into the gorget. Good steel this, to stop such a blow." "My brother's mace, most like," Baelor said thickly. "He's strong," he winced. "That feels queer. Here it comes." Pate lifted the battered helm away. "Gods be good. Oh gods, oh gods, oh gods preserve." Dunk saw something red and wet fall out of the helm. Someone was screaming, high and terrible. Against the bleak gray sky swayed a tall prince in black armor with only half a skull. He could see red blood and pale bone beneath, and something else, something blue-gray and pulpy. A queer, troubled look passed across Baelor Breakspear's face, like a cloud passing before a sun. He raised his hand and touched the back of his head with 2 fingers, oh so slightly, and then he fell. Dunk caught him. "Up, they say," he said, just as he had with Thunder in the melee. "Up, up!" But he never remembered that afterward, and the prince did not rise. Baelor Breakspear died defending a Hedge Knight. That's seen as an irony, but it's actually fitting for him. He defended the weak. He defended someone who could not defend themselves fully, and that aligns with the man that he was. After his death, Martin essentially gave Baelor an obituary-style description for his funeral, describing him dressed as befit the man he was, not in mail and armor, but as a Targaryen, a politician, and a man who could fight, but a man who would prefer to keep his sword sheathed. Baelor of the House Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, Hand of the King, Protector of the Realm, and heir apparent to the Iron Throne of the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros, went to the fire in the yard of Ashford Castle on the north bank of the river Cockleswent. Other great houses might choose to bury their dead in the dark earth or sink them into the cold green sea, but the Targaryens were the blood of the dragon, and their ends were writ in flame. He had been the finest knight of his age, and some argued that he should have gone to face the dark, clad in mail and plate, a sword in his hand. In the end, though, his royal father's wishes prevailed, and Daemon II had a peaceable nature. When Dunk shuffled past Baelor's bier, the prince wore a dark velvet tunic with the three-headed dragon picked out in scarlet thread upon his breast. Around his throat was a heavy gold chain. His sword was sheathed by his side, but he did wear a helm, a thin gold helm with an open visor so men could see his face. Westeros did not lose a warrior at Ashford. It lost the only man in the room who consistently understood how to hold the system together without breaking it. In the Mystery Night, years later, we hear how people still remember the balance he and Maekar once represented. His father was weak as well, that is true, but when his throne was threatened, he had sons to take the field for him, Baelor and Maekar, the hammer and the anvil. But Baelor Breakspear is no more, and Prince Maekar sulks at Summerhall, at odds with Hand and King. That line tells us everything. Hammer and anvil, complementary forces, strength and structure. Now the hammer is gone, and what follows is not stability, it is erosion. After Baelor's death, the tragedies accelerate. The great spring sickness sweeps across the realm. Valar, Mataris, Daemon the Good himself are all gone. The line that seemed secure collapses in a single wave of illness. The prince who would have inherited Baelor's legacy dies before he can rule, and then the succession fractures further. Aerys inherits, a king remembered not for strength or diplomacy, but for scholarship and detachment. His marriage remains unconsummated, and the line grows thin. When Aerys dies, he leaves no children. His brother Rhaegal had already predeceased him, choking to death on a lamprey pie during a feast. Rhaegal's son Aelor becomes heir, only to die 2 years later, slain in a grotesque accident by his own twin sister and wife Aelora. Aelora herself descends into grief and madness, and later takes her own life. One by one, the heirs vanish. What remains is not a confident succession, it is exhaustion. So the crown passes, almost by attrition, to Maekar. But before Maekar ascends, there is Aerys I, and Aerys does not rule the way Baelor would have. Septon Sefton said this: "'Tis Lord Rivers who rules us, with his spells and spies. There is no one to oppose him. Prince Maekar sulks at Summerhall. Prince Rhaegal is as meek as he is mad. Friends and favorites of Lord Rivers fill every office. The Red Keep is garrisoned by ravens' teeth, and no man sees the king without his leave. That is not visible authority, that is shadow governance." Critics of the regime say openly, "Bloodraven put King Aerys on the throne. Aerys is weak, and when he dies it will be bloody war between Lord Rivers and Prince Maekar for the crown, the hand against the heir." That prophecy doesn't seem to be accurate, but that doesn't matter. The perception exists. Under Daemon II and under Baelor, dissent could be absorbed. Under Aerys, it festers. Under Bloodraven, it is watched, punished, and suppressed, which results in it spreading even further. We are also shown the philosophical differences between Baelor and Bloodraven by Egg, who was a cupbearer for them. Uncle Baelor said that clemency was best when dealing with an honorable foe, but Lord Bloodraven said that when you pardon rebels, you only plant the seeds of the next rebellion. These are two versions of rule. Baelor builds loyalty. Bloodraven eliminates threats and breeds enemies. One stabilizes through integration, the other suppresses through surveillance and fear. And without Baelor alive to balance that philosophy, Bloodraven dominates. Even Maekar understands what was lost. After Ashford, he tells Dunk, "Each time a battle is lost, or a crop fails, the fools will say, Baelor would not have let it happen. Maekar is described in The World of Ice and Fire as energetic, a warrior of note, but also a harsh man, quick to judge and to condemn. He had never possessed his brother Baelor's gifts that made friends and allies come easily. Baelor built coalitions. Maekar commands obedience. That difference changes everything. Baelor Breakspear was not simply heir to the throne. He was the moderate force between extremes, the visible symbol of reconciliation, the man who could lead centuries-old enemies into battle together. Once he died, the succession grew unstable, and the realm never quite regained its balance again. In some ways, George may have made Baelor too perfect, but then that makes his death hurt all the more. Anyway, what do you think? Was Baelor as perfect as he seemed? There's something I missed? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for listening to the Lore Weaver podcast. If this episode sparked questions or changed how you viewed the text, please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments or pass this episode along to someone who enjoys thoughtful literary discussion. Until next time, keep reading closely and explore the lore.